He's an architect of long standing in the Twin Cities community. Mr. Bentz was one of the original architects in the design and construction of this building that we're celebrating, the First Unitarian Society building at 900 Mount Curb Avenue. We're celebrating its 50th year this year. Mr. Bentz, how is it that you got involved in the construction and design of this building?
I came to the Office of Long and Thorship, as it was known at that time, in 1948, directly out of the University of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. What is it you worked on here in the building? I know architects don't work on everything, but I suppose you had some special areas of interest.
Well, in the early stages, I wasn't involved. I think there were some drawings on the project in the office when I first came, but it seemed to be dormant for some time. When it finally got started, I then was assigned to what we then called the working drawing crew. Newt Griffith was in charge of the design at the time. And one of my particular assignments was the curtain, what we now call curtain wall, this large grass wall.
Well, that was, we consider this, of course, one of the unique features of our building. Mm-hmm. Was it that unique at the time?
Well, I think it was. To my knowledge, I think this is probably the largest space of glass in the Twin Cities and probably in the state. We've had 50 years now to design much more sophisticated, what we call curtain walls. This was kind of your first effort, I think, in this area, so it was rather a challenge for me.
You know, as we look out at the cities these days, there are buildings that like the IDS building and some of the others that are glass from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. So glass has become very important. Hopefully they're better at using glass than they used to. What special problems did you discover in trying to install this curtain wall?
Well, first of all, at that time, it was a relatively new technique. We decided to insert some steel channels in those verticals to span from the floor up to the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And those steel channels are coated with asphalt to prevent any electrolytic action. Other than that, we took what were standard materials at that time, standard aluminum shapes and standard bar shapes in aluminum, and assembled them as best we could. We were helped by a gentleman from Crown Iron in assembling it. He was a pretty good man as far as aluminum construction was concerned. As I say, nowadays it's much simpler. You can almost buy these walls out of a catalog, a package. We also this was the first major use, I think, of insulating glass. And I would guess at that time that we only had a 1-year warranty on the glass.
Only 1 year?
Yeah, now it's about 10, but they still fail. And I don't know how many failures you've had, but looking at the wall, you may have been reasonably lucky.
Well, down at that other end, about 15 feet from where we are standing at this moment, there are some signs of failure. There's some condensation between the two layers of glass. Mm-hmm. Is that the kind of failure you're talking about?
Yes, the seal between the two layers of glass has been much improved over the years. Mm-hmm. At the time, there were two companies making this glass, Libby Owens Ford and Pittsburgh Plate Glass, and each had a different way of sealing the glass, but I can tell you with certainty that this is much improved. We still have failures on occasion, either because of settling or improper setting of the glass on setting blocks, that kind of thing.
We're, putting up a glass wall like that, it appears to me that although it looks light and sort of feels light, mm-hmm. psychologically at any rate, it also has a certain danger in it because it's glass, after all, under a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. And you just worry about the strength of a wall like that. Mm-hmm. Is that one of the things you were concerned with?
Well, we were, but the wall is designed by code to understand to undergo certain wind pressures, that kind of thing. So from that aspect, I think it's reasonably safe.
And so it's continued to be safe for 50 years. I hope it'll continue for a while.
I think unless you have an extremely high wind, and I don't know what that would be. It's kind of like the 100-year rain that only occurs every 10 years.
What about other aspects of this building that you're aware of? Are there other things that are unique about this building that you'd like to address?
Well, I think in my mind, it could be called an example of early modernism. And I think, like other buildings in this area at that time, it probably took some of its clues from a church over in South Minneapolis, designed by the Finnish architect Elio Saarinen. The rather simple forms, simple brick, not a lot of ostentation, that kind of thing. I think if you were to see these other buildings, these other churches particularly, you would recognize that the designer, I think, drew some of inspiration from that project.
Would you call this an important building?
I think it is a good example of early modernism in Minneapolis. When you think about it, there were still a lot of Gothic churches being done in Minneapolis at that time, in the 1950s.
Well, important in the sense that it was a unique design, but did it have? Do you think this had any influence on the design of other buildings or other churches?
I would think so. Yes, not so much churches probably as other kinds of buildings. I don't know. It doesn't have the typical tower or the typical embellishments and symbols that many churches have.
One of the things that intrigued me always was the ceiling. Now the ceiling up there, of course, it's blue and it suggests a little bit of heaven or sky at least, but the undulations of the ceiling have always intrigued me. Was that done purely for visual design or for other purposes?
I think it might have been done for both. Again, I was not in on the original design phase. I know in part it was done because of acoustics to break up two flat surfaces between the floor and the ceiling. And I think partly because of design to somewhat soften the space.
Mm-hmm. The materials of the ceiling, would they pose any problems for us today?
They might. To the best of my knowledge, that was one of the earlier acoustical plasters developed in those years, and I suspect that it's got asbestos in it.
Oh, and so if we ever decide to change that ceiling or take it down, we'd have a health hazard.
Possibly, yes. I think what you should do is actually have it tested to be sure that there is asbestos in it.
I see. What about the brick of this building? The brick quality is, a lot of us like it a great deal. Have you any comments about the kind of brick that was used or the way it was installed?
Yes, I do. Actually, it's called Chicago Common Brick, which actually was made in Chicago and was used in a lot of factories that time, but it became rather popular in the 50s. First of all, it was very inexpensive. It's a rather porous brick, and we may have sealed it here, I'm not sure. One other unusual thing, at that time, we started to go to what we call modular coursing, where 3 brick would fit into 8 inches. In the past, it would be about 8 3/4 inches. And the brick here is rather irregular, so it doesn't lay as neatly, and that was intentional. It's rather textured form. We had laid the building out with what we call modular coursing, which was new at that time. And someone selected this brick. I don't recall whether it was Mr. Griffiths or Mr. Cerny, and without thinking about the fact that it wouldn't lay up 3 and 8. So I took this problem back to the office and agonized over how to do this. Fortunately, we had a very good brick superintendent on the job, and using what they used to call a story pole, about a 6-foot pole, he went all the way around the building and coursed the brick to fit between the various openings, window to window, that sort of thing. And I'm still amazed to this day. It's really not evident how he did this. I'm not quite sure how he did it, but suffice it to say he did a very good job.
Well, Mr. Bentz, this building is now 50 years old.
Yes.
Do you think it stood up pretty well in time?
I think so.
And also design?
Looking at a number of buildings around, and a lot of buildings at 50 years old that aren't standing, let's face it. So basically, you may have thought so at the time, it was not an expensive building at the time in terms of square footage or anything like that, even though it may have troubled your budget a bit. But I think it stood up amazingly well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you about our building, which is dear to us. We come here almost every week, most of us, and it's a very, very important center, and we appreciate the chance to have you talk about it.
Well, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you.